Wow, just wow. This film is a masterpiece in directing, visuals, and lore. These three things right here are just some of the reasons why myself and Cooper will fight for this movie, and why it is very underappreciated within the MCU, fans, and critics alike.
Our three areas of discussion today will be about filmmaking and storytelling, characters and themes, and the impact of Eternals on the MCU. It was clear that from the final product that a lot of care was taken into the production of this movie. Chloe Zhao really created the most visually impressive MCU movie by making technically competent decisions from an artist's perspective, such as filming on location, carefully picking character positions, and the camera movement to combine for some of Marvel's best cinematography.
Where to begin, honestly, from the amazing directing and the fantastic score from Raman Djawadi, sorry if I mispronounced that, sets the stage and tone of the film immediately from the opening shot to the very last shot. This movie has so much exposition and so much new lore being introduced into the MCU, leading to more of a slower burn movie which uses camera angles and high saturation in many of the film's locations. The opening crawl to begin the movie gave it such a grand feeling, with similar vibes to something you would see from Star Wars. The crawl introduces the main plot whilst leading the audiences to have the same belief as the Eternals, creating that mystery which becomes revealed later in the film.
Having the opening shot introduce the Domo cruising past Sol, it sets the standard for the quality of the rest of the film, including Druig's descent down the stairs during the Tenochtitlan era, the deviant fight in Babylon, or every single shot of Arishem. It reflects the care taken by Chloe Zhao and the post-production team to portray the galaxy in a bright way, signifying a hopeful outlook, a changing of times, and promise of an exciting future beyond the blip. From a storytelling perspective, this movie crafts a beautifully intertwined narrative, weaving between the past and present to show us the development of this new roster of heroes.
With the numerous flashbacks and present-day tonal shifts in each location, such as Babylon, which was honestly such a spectacle, Cooper and I just froze in shock seeing it again because of how visually impressive it is.
Because the film is so visually attractive, it feels very vibrant and colourful, and therefore presents a far different vibe than something like The Winter Soldier or Infinity War.
The reason we praise Chloe Zhao so greatly is due to our understanding of how to make these characters of the Eternals feel so unique and godlike, due to their costumes, demeanour, and positioning them on screen. For instance, in that opening fight on Earth, we see Icarus floating down below the sun to see a silhouette of all the Eternals together. This right here is visual storytelling at its finest.
Even if the same story was presented in the show, I think it would lose the flow of the story. Splitting it up allows more time to be spent establishing characters and setting up the story, but the Eternals narrative doesn't need that.
The threat of the Celestials makes the audience feel like the stakes are so high, and the danger of having a birth of the Celestial feels so scary, yet understanding how it helps create the other galaxies. This gives a great cause of division within the group, and tells a compelling story with grand implications. I think people tend to forget that due to the larger roster of characters does not automatically rule out the fact that they are underdeveloped or bland. That is not the case.
It is important to consider the impact of the characters when they are on screen rather than just existing in the scene.
Even for characters like Druig, who had very little screen time, we see he could not just leave the people on Earth to fight against themselves and watch them perish without intervening. This gave him a purpose greater than working under the rules of voice of Arishem and Ajak doing his own thing. It feels so good knowing that the MCU still has some creativity within their projects, and seeing the execution of the directors and screenwriters is just a joy to consume.
I love that this movie explores the themes of purpose and choice. From the most basic of standpoints, the Eternals' sole purpose is to eliminate the deviants.
Yet this was intentional. When the film's climax and revelation is presented, they are just the tools and pawns to the Celestials, just as the Eternals, thus creating this doubt in the audience to decide who the true villains and heroes are. The story and characters are unanimous within this film. Each character has their own motive and way of conflict that separates them from one another, but still being a family. Each one served their purpose for either the story, character motives, and where they're going in the future.
As the story grows and the characters grow more fond of the humans, each character seeks a new purpose and assumes a new identity away from Arishem's judgment. Kingo exemplifies both in quite a satirical manner, growing his life into Bollywood acting and creating an entire family ancestry to support his illusion of immortality.
This is captivating and engaging, with numerous characters having their own ideologies which are setting up future installments and or ending their own development within this film.
Druig's choice to be the first to leave the Eternals due to seeing the flaws in their ways brings us back to the vast array of each character's uniquely designed and weaved into the story. Druig is the most interesting Eternal, but his story beyond the group split feels very subdued in comparison to what Kingo, Cersei and Ajax choose to do. From this simple analysis, it's clear that Chloe Zhao had the exact right idea of how each character can contribute to the story without being majorly involved in the unraveling plot.
I absolutely love the way the Eternals are presented as these MCU godlike figures, which all have different costumes and colours and powers to differ within their own motives, making it a treat to watch and an experience in every watch.
Purpose is the most fascinating thing to explore when analysing this film because Eternals are immortal, and therefore their different levels of purpose are not easily defined. You can achieve anything you want when you can live forever. That's why the journeys and destinations of the Eternals individually are quite remarkable. Why would Cersei choose to be a teacher? Why does Kingo choose to be a Bollywood star? Why does Phastos choose to raise a family? It boils down to this. Eternals is a reflection of humanity, our flaws, our behaviours, our ability to love. The Eternals' association within humanity and taking on these different levels of purpose is a reflection of who we are as the audience and, more importantly, as humans. I think the most perfect scene to summarise this comes from Ajax.
I have seen them fight and lie and kill, but I have also seen them laugh and love. I've seen them create and dream.
The Eternals film excels in existing as its own movie without relying on any other projects to understand what is going on. The subtle references to the MCU timeline, such as the humorous debate about the new leader of the Avengers, Dane Whitman's certainty that Cersei is a wizard much like Doctor Strange, or the many nods to the occurrence of the blip, all make this film feel like it is a small part of a larger MCU story. It reminds us that, although there are no direct links to established MCU characters, that they still exist in the same universe. This perfectly exemplifies the interconnectedness between MCU projects without over-reliance on cameos. What makes Eternals so impressive beyond its balance with the MCU is that it is a film that breeds opportunity for the future. Granted, of course, these setups are actually addressed in the future. First and foremost, it is impossible to continue without mentioning a half-submerged Celestial sticking out of the ocean. It is yet to be even mentioned in the MCU by any character in the first 2 years that have followed the movie, and it feels like it should be a massive discussion point moving forward. Yet, despite the lack of address to the issue, it is exciting to see what Marvel will do with this. There is also the setup of Dane Whitman as the Black Knight alongside Blade, both of which were introduced in the post-credit scene of the film. With the Blade film scheduled for 2025, it will be satisfying to see this setup paid off. And finally, the main story for Eternals 2 is also established, with Arishem ready to make his judgment on Earth, and the quest for Thena, Makari and Druig, alongside new member Eros, to rescue Cersei, Phastos and Kingo. There is nothing set in concrete yet about the future of the sequel to Eternals, but this movie does a brilliant job at expanding the roster of Marvel heroes, creating a devastating impact on Earth 616, and setting up storylines for characters moving forward.
Just as Cooper said before, the ties to the other projects are very minor and are throwaway lines, which makes this movie feel unique and far more of a creative project, rather than relying on cameos like Doctor Strange 2 or even Tom Holland's Spider-Man installments. The ending of this film having a Celestial being half created in the ocean, and so far no ties or mentions to it in the grand scheme of the MCU, makes myself a little sad in terms of the company seemingly to almost forget about this grand story and film. The implications of having these higher order beings that aren't real but are created beings with strong powers that could rival multiversal beings opens a door for future Avengers projects, such as Secret Wars if they go this route. One simple sentence for the story and the impact on the MCU in my opinion: their stakes feel so high with vast implications for the future, even if other projects refuse to mention or ignore it completely. Now, as Cooper said before, Blade, oh man, isn't he one of just the coolest characters in the MCU? To have only his voice and be so hyped for this project, I am most definitely tuning in to see this. Now, for Eternals 2, I would also love to see the remaining Eternals to go out on a rescue mission, like Cooper said before. However, I would like the story to elevate a bit more than just a rescue mission, but to have the Eternals show up with Eros and have a time-hopping adventure flick with some crazy visuals and score. I hope that also there is a possibility of developing the established characters even further, due to have some surviving in the first film, whilst bringing further lore and new ones to the table too, which are one of my favourite aspects from the movie. Honestly, I would love Chloe Zhao to return in a directing chair, yet the poor reception from the film's reviews sadly may not seem to happen with Chloe, and even happening with Eternals at this point of time, until far, far into the future, sadly.
Eternals brings a different palette to the MCU. Much like the projects in Phase 4 did, we found ourselves amongst a new roster of heroes in the world we have come to know and love. And sure, there were hit or miss projects, but Eternals hit all the right notes, and Chloe Zhao delivered an outstanding piece of cinema that works both in and out of the MCU.
Crib and I would love to thank you for your support on this channel, and we hope you liked the video, and let us know your thoughts down below. We love interacting and discussing with you guys and everything about this video and others.
So with that being said, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.